Hello, everyone, and welcome to this IFORS webinar. I'm very pleased to welcome you to the event, which today is dedicated to the IFORS-ITOR-Wiley Best Paper Award. And as you see here in this slide, it will be my pleasure to introduce the webinar and then give the floor to Stefan Nickel, who is the Euro Vice President responsible for publications, one of the members of the Administrative Committee of IFORS, and then to Celso Ribeiro, who is the Editor-in-Chief of ITOR. Please, Christy. I take once again the opportunity, if you have attended any of the previous global webinars of IFORS, to say just a few words about IFORS, because IFORS is, I think, known to everyone, but not all know what IFORS really is. And IFORS is indeed the International Federation of all the operational research societies in the world. And as you see, we have 54 member societies at the moment. In the last years, we had some new entries, and we are negotiating the birth of some new societies. So maybe the next time I will talk to you, it will be the number of member societies will be higher. The member societies of IFORS are organized in 4 regional groups, as you have seen earlier. Can you go back just a second, Christy, please? In 4 regional groupings, NORAM, North America, ALIO, South America, the Latin American societies, Euro, the European societies, IFORS, Asian Pacific societies, and IFORS, in parentheses, is not yet a grouping. That's why the groupings are 4, but we hope in the future to have a 5th regional grouping, including the African societies. Thanks, Christine. I also take the opportunity at the beginning of each of the global webinars to show you the names of the members of the IFORS Administrative Committee, because these are the people, the colleagues who work behind the scenes to make a number of things happen, including what is going on today. And you see here, besides myself and the Vice President, who is from South Korea, we have the past President, Michael Trick, who has been President the 3 years before my term, the Treasurer, Richard Hartl, and 4 Vice Presidents. Each of the Vice Presidents, each of these 4 Vice Presidents represents a region, a regional grouping. And Stefan Nickel, who will speak after me, represents Euro and is responsible for publications. And each of the other members of the Administrative Committee is responsible for a line of activities, such as the newsletter, the developing countries, the conferences, and so on and so forth. And of course, we have Mary, who is the IFORS secretary, and also Christy, who is kindly moving the slides. As I mentioned, we had a series of webinars already before the one we are having today. And the webinar started just a little after the beginning of the pandemic, when we realized that we couldn't meet in person, and it would have been difficult to meet in person for a long time. So IFORS decided to start this series of global webinars to give an opportunity to our community to remain in touch and to share the results of some communities or other kinds of achievements of our researchers. And the first 4 webinars were dedicated to the regional groupings. So some of the best research was presented that was coming from those 4 regions. And then the 5th webinar was dedicated to the research going on in Africa, some of the best research going on there in that region. In June this year, we had a very interesting webinar on gender diversity with representatives of the different regions. And the webinar of today is really focused on the flagship journal of IFORS-ITOR. ITOR has a long story and has become more and more one of the leading journals in the OR community. And I'm very pleased today to have the opportunity to present this award, who has been established very recently, and together with the introduction to this award, we will also present the researchers who have won these awards. Now it's time for Stefan to continue with the introduction of the awards. Thanks, Stefan.
Okay, thank you, Gracia. So hello, everybody. Good morning from for the US part or the South America part. Good evening for Asia, and for Europe, it's in the middle of the working day if we continue working until 8 in the evening. So let's see. No, we will not do that. So it's my pleasure really to zoom into these IFORS-ITOR-Wiley Best Paper Awards. As you can see, it consists of 3 names. And this is also why we had this webinar, just to also make this connection clear. So first, I would like to the first message of this webinar is that ITOR is the flagship journal of IFORS, and they 2 belong together. When talking to colleagues, I sometimes find out that ITOR is well recognized, but the connection is not known, or IFORS is well known, but the connection to ITOR is not recognized, and maybe the webinar helps. Of course, for the ones listening, probably they know that already. And of course, the third name here, Wiley, which made it possible, our publisher of ITOR, to hand out this award. And I would like to welcome Anthony Hay. Thanks for taking your time to listening to that. Now it's that Wiley is denoting donating some money every year, and we are able to award these IFORS-ITOR-Wiley award for every year for best papers in the 2 categories, for review papers and for methodology papers. And we are very happy. The only bad timing was that we founded that in 2019, and so the first year where we could have awarded it, and we wanted to do it in South Korea, it just went wrong. So we had some little virus come in our way, and it was this time not a computer virus, and so we had to delay things a little bit. But we thought these webinar series, as Gracia introduced, is really very popular now, and it's also nice. It's recorded, so you can review it several times if you like the presentation. So also we thought we should give, of course, something like best papers. What is better than hearing a talk about a best paper? Otherwise, you never know what the talk will contain. This time, you know for sure it's good. So yeah. This is about this award. I will hand over now to the editor-in-chief, Celso Ribeiro, who is really the most prominent person to present that. He's also the head, of course, of the awarding committee. And I think there's no one better than him to say some words about ITOR, to promote ITOR, to tell you how good this journal is, that you should send in your papers, because we have a rejection rate of nearly 90%. So we need a lot of papers to get the 10% out of it. Sorry. And yeah, and he will also introduce the speakers. And after we have the 2 talks, we will have question and answers, which you can write in the question and answer box. and I will try to moderate a little bit the question and answers, but we will do it after the two talks, otherwise it's disrupted. But also if you have questions, I think the speakers can read the question and answer box, and maybe some question can be answered directly, like, I don't know, where is the paper exactly, in which year published, or do you have related papers? Maybe this is something I don't need to moderate and we don't have discussions, but we will see that. I hope you all enjoy the presentation of ITOR and the talks later, and I hand over to Celso. The stage is yours, Celso.
Thank you, Stefan, and thanks. Welcome to everyone that is with us. It's a pleasure to be here. This is the second year that we have this prize. Last year, we didn't have the opportunity to have this seminar. It's very nice that we can have it here this year. The prize then was established in 2019, and we recognized one article and one runner-up per year in two categories. One is surveys and tutorials, and the second one is methodology and applications. The candidates are all articles published in the two precedent years of the prize, okay? And there is a cash prize for the winner in each category and certificates to the winner and to the runner-up. This is for the, and just one comment, there is a committee. I share this committee, and there are 6 other people in the committees, some that are associate editors of the journal and others that are pointed out by IFORS, for instance, okay? And the criteria used by this committee, it's a 2-step procedure. So we consider citations, we consider bibliometric data, such as citations and downloads and so on. But we also have a discussion about the contributions of each paper. It's not only bibliometric data, okay? So there is a discussion between the members of the panel to make a final decision, okay? So bibliometric information is just part of the information that is used to reach a decision. So if we can move to the next slide. So I will start with some information about the journal. So this is the number of downloads, which I think is something very relevant. So this shows that we are improving the number of downloads, increasing the number of downloads every year. And this shows that more people are reading the papers published in the ITOR, are downloading it. And so this is relevant for those who want to publish, that your papers will be read if you publish it in ITOR, okay? So these figures, I think, are very interesting if you consider what we obtained in the last 6 years, since 2016 to 2021. And the other slide, next one, shows the increase in the impact factor, okay? So we can see that since we were first indexed exactly 10 years ago, okay, when we got the impact factor of 0.6, now we are at about 4.2. So this is a great improvement, and this shows that again, your work cited in ITOR, work published in ITOR, is being cited, okay? And ITOR is now ranked in 22nd place over 84 publications in OR and management science. And I think these statistics show the strength of the journal. we are expected to publish this year 150 papers, which is much more than about 20 papers that were publishing 15 years ago. Okay, so these are some statistics about the journal. I'll not spend too much with them. These, I think, are the most relevant in that summarize the evolution of the journal. So if we can move to the next slide now. So these are the authors of the two best papers in the two categories, those that will be presenting in this talk today. So Isabel, Narbon-Perpina, and Kristof de Witte. So in the category of reviews, tutorials, and Kenneth, Sorensen, Florian, Arnold, and Daniel Cuervo in the category of methodology and applications. Okay. They will present, they will have about 20 minutes. So in the category of surveys and tutorials, the winner, as I said, was the survey by Isabel and Kristof. Okay, they will present their work. It was published in 2018, volume 25 of ITOR, and the runner-up was that paper here, Applying Queuing Theory to the Study of Emergence Department Operations, a survey and a discussion of comparable simulation studies. It was published in the same year. Okay, so let's move to the next slide. These are some statistics about this work. This is the fourth most downloaded paper in the history of ITOR. Okay, until last week they had about almost 12,700 downloads and 73 citations. Okay, these are data updated to last week. These are very good statistics. Okay, and if we move to the next slide. So these are the two authors. So if the information is correct, they give the affiliations of Isabel and Kristof at Barcelona and Louvain. Okay. And next, no, I think okay, that was not what I was expecting, Christian. I would like to give the information about the other papers, but we can do this way too. Okay, then I'll talk about Kenneth later. Okay, that's okay. Can start now.
Okay, so thank you very much, Celso, for this kind introduction on the paper. And we are, both Isabel and myself, we are extremely honored to receive this prize and to see also those impressive numbers. So thank you very much to share them with us and to all of us. So indeed, so our paper is named Local Government's Efficiency, a Systematic Literature Review, Part 1. So this makes you wonder what happened with Part 2. So hopefully the numbers are as impressive as you showed a moment ago, Celso, on Part 2. I'll make a little bit of publicity on Part 2 as well, but Part 1 is definitely the one which was selected by the team to have the category of surveys and tutorials. So in this paper, we discuss a little bit the evaluation of efficiency in local governments. Obviously, as you know, this is an increasing trend to discuss local government efficiency, and many papers in this literature are focusing on a very specific local service. For instance, they are looking at waste collection, at water services, as fire services, library services, etc. And within the specific local service, people try to look at what is the impact on efficiency, what is the efficiency level of water services, what matters in the collection of water, for instance. If you look at input-output variables with library services, what is the level of efficiency in library services? This is not what this paper is about. This paper is about the more global point of view, in which we try to look at the performance of a municipality, of local governments, from a more global point of view, where we try to consider multiple inputs and multiple outputs at the level of the municipality. So that, for instance, the services that a municipality provides. And this includes both waste collection, water services, fire services, etc. So it's a more comprehensive, overarching view that we're going to look at in this paper. This paper tries to review this existing literature on government efficiency from this global point of view. So we look at what is the efficiency level of local governments, and we collected all in a systematic way. We collected all articles from 1990 till 2016. And in part one, so that's the left-hand side picture, we try to see, what is the level of efficiency now? What are the differences in efficiency, and what kind of tools, what kind of input-output variables that people use? I'll come to this in a moment. In the second part, we're going to focus on the incorporation of environmental variables, because of course, local governments, they are completely different. A local government in Brazil is different from the one in Italy, is different from the one in Belgium, and hence there are quite a bit of environmental variables that matter. And this is what we discuss in the second part. So in this accompanying paper, which I'm not going to discuss, we focus on methods, for instance. So if you would like to do a review, or if you would like to, if you're asked by a reviewer, so why do you use an OLS approach to justify what methods you use? Why did you use a meta-frontier approach? In this part 2 paper, we list all of the papers which have been using toolbit approaches, which have been using OLS approaches, and then we comment on them and show to the evolution over time, we point to some statistical issues and statistical methods, etc. In this other paper, which I'm not going to discuss, we also show graphs like this one, like the social and demographic determinants. So what matters? What are the underlying variables that matter in local government efficiency? What are the economic determinants like unemployment, economic status, tourism? What kind of variables have been used in determining the heterogeneity among governments, and what can you do yourself? And it provides you like kind of inspiration box, a toolbox on what can you use and how different are municipalities, are local governments. And to facilitate you as a researcher, again, we summarized all other papers, all earlier papers in a systematic way, such that you can just take, for instance, population growth. Oh, this has been used in this paper before. And this justifies also why you can do this. And it gives you also ideas on what kind of variables you have to include. But as I said, I won't discuss this paper. I'm going to focus on this part 1 paper, in which the contribution is mainly in a detailed review of studies. And it's a detailed review, so it's a systematic approach in which we define the data sources, in which we define the keywords, in which we look at a kind of inclusion and exclusion criteria. And then we look at the local government efficiency in various countries. We compare the samples and the data, and we compare what is the average efficiency level across countries, for instance. Second, and probably very interesting for you as a researcher again, is we provide a description of techniques which have been used. What methods has been used, and what are the trends in those methods? So how can you see the evolution in the methods, and what is the best practice basically to do? And then finally, and probably very, very important within non-parametric efficiency analysis, such as data envelopment analysis, free disposal hull analysis, etc., is the classification of input and output variables. And that's quite relevant, I guess, for you as a researcher, because a very common referee statement that you will happen or have been seen before is something like, why did you use this specific input, output, and contextual variable? And then basically you can just refer to our paper and say, as discussed in this specific paper, this is a common way and this is a common method. Alternative methods are these and these and these, but based on data availability, etc., I can't use them. So that's basically a service that we provide, and that's probably also why this paper has been frequently downloaded, simply because this referee statement is quite popular, and at the same time we offer a kind of a survey up to this point. We didn't start in void with this paper, so our paper builds on earlier work, and there are 5 overviews and 5 previous literature reviews that we started from. So the first one is from Workington and Dollery in 2000s. They looked at an empirical analysis on local government efficiency, using a systematic review as well until 1990. So this is of course already some older review. There's also the work by Afonso and Fernandez, reviewing non-parametric and global local government efficiency, so some very selective studies. Also the work by Kalpes, interesting to look at because they collected 23 studies that we could build on. Also the work by Da Cruz and Marquez is in a similar approach, looked at the determinants, so that's very similar to this part 2 of the literature review. And the work by Di Oliveira, looking on input-output variables that has been used. Our paper here differs from these earlier works because we take a more comprehensive point of view, a more systematic point of view, and we try to combine those various insights as well, looking both at the variables, at the methodologies, at the references, etc. So coming to the data that we use in the literature review, so first of all, we collected all of papers until August 2016. So our final data set has about 84 studies. And I'm going to first focus on the country level analysis. So you know already everything about the methodology by now, about the introduction. The country level, in the paper, you will see various tables. And this is just a screenshot from one of those tables in which we show for different countries, for instance, for Australia or Belgium, what other authors has been used, what other papers are there for the specific country. What is a sample that they studied? For instance, did they look at local councils? Did they look at municipalities, etc.? What is the period studied? And then what is the main efficiency level? And this mean and efficiency, it's interesting, of course, because it gives you a little bit of upper and lower bound for your analysis as well. It allows you to judge, are my results reasonable? And maybe did I use the correct or the proper input-output variables, the proper determinants? So you can look back to those countries. If you do an analysis on Australia, for instance, you can easily see which studies have been used in what time periods. So it gives you an overview on this perspective. What we observe as well and what we document in the paper is the differences in average efficiency scores. So there are quite a bit of remarkable differences in efficiency scores, which are due to the samples, obviously, but also to the methodologies, the variables included. And then we try to see some trends in that. I'll come to this in a moment. So for instance, on the countries, you see that Spanish municipalities, they have been most analyzed. We observed 13 papers on this, followed by Belgium, 9 papers, and Germany, 8 papers. So this means that I see that many of you are also from Asia here. So there is definitely a lot of work to do from Asia perspective. So look at local municipalities from Asia. So that's definitely a trend that we should foster and look at. And from a disciplinary analysis, we see that, yeah, there is quite a bit of mixed multidisciplinary subjects in this country level analysis. So we found analysis looking at the economic side, but also public administration, urban studies, political science, for instance, are very interesting perspectives that has been taken in those overall global local government efficiency. And then finally, in the country level analysis, these are the average scores of efficiency. So looking at those different papers that we found, we tried to summarize what is the average efficiency in, for instance, Germany, in, for instance, Japan or the USA. And then you can see differences across countries, which are, of course, again, due to data availability about methodologies. But on the other hand, it gives you also a kind of overall arching perspective, like South Africa, Morocco, Indonesia, Italy, I'm sorry, Grazia, is doing worse with respect to the average efficiency scores than other countries. And again, this is policy relevant, of course, but you as a researcher, it allows you as well to see, yeah, where do my results position, and how can I interpret my position relatively to other work that has been done in the past. That's for the country level analysis. From a methodological perspective, we try to also show you on what has been done, what kind of approaches has been taken in the past. And then we try to summarize methods according to, so to classify the methods according to non-parametric approaches, semi-parametric approaches, parametric approaches, and try to see so studies that use data envelopment analysis, for instance, use super efficiency models, use free disposal hull models, but also stochastic frontier models, corrected Orley squares, ratios, etc., and giving again a little bit of an overview of what has been done and what are the time trends in those studies. Finally, a very important part of the paper is devoted to the input and output indicators, simply because this is like the main questions from referees all the time. And so we try to show that, yeah, input and output indicators are dependent on the country, of course, and on the data availability. So some variables are used in multiple countries, other variables are very specific to a specific country. Of course, there are also issues with accounting practices and characteristics of local governments. And then on the other hand, there's also issues on the costs terms. So that's why many of the papers that we reviewed are focusing on global financial expenditures, like the total expenditures, like the current expenditures, rather than on very specific price information. And that's, of course, one of the advantages, again, on data envelopment analysis, on free disposal hull analysis, where you do have those, where you don't need those price information again. We try to see also output indicators, try to show, for instance, where has been population used, total output indicators, administrative services, and then very specific infrastructures like street lighting, municipal roads, etc. So these are just a few snapshots and a few screenshots from the paper, but I guess it gives you a little bit of intuition on how did we approach that topic and what makes this literature review different from other literature reviews, and how can you use the literature review in your own practice. In the conclusion, we also try to stimulate you a little bit in your research. So we thought, given that we've seen all of this literature now, what kind of perspectives are definitely needed and what kind of elements should be researched even more in depth. And one thing that we thought would be interesting for you as a researcher to take into account in your practice is the use of cross-sectional data and panel data. Many studies, they have a panel structure available, and in many studies that we looked at, there is a panel structure, but it's rarely used. So people tend to forget the panel structure and use a more cross-sectional data approach. And so this is our main first advice. So in future research, we should better look at, yeah, the evolution over time, and to exploit really the panel structure in the data, so that you can obtain different insights on the managerial perspectives, on the policy making perspectives, and the dynamic efficiency which comes with that. So this was a first line for further research. A second line for further research is the availability of data. There was a huge heterogeneity in the data that are available in different countries. And so if you have connections with policymakers, definitely show them the importance of collecting better administrative data and providing them for researchers. The differences that we observe in efficiency level are for some part due to the data availability, and better data allows all of us to move forward and to measure better local government efficiency. Third, what we saw is as well that partial analysis is very popular, whereas a more comprehensive approach would be more beneficial. And in this more comprehensive approach, you look at the government from its different services. And in a recent paper that I wrote with Giovanni Di Verno and Mike Smet, we look at this policy evaluation in a multi-input, multi-output perspective. And we think that this is something that moves on and shows better heterogeneity across municipalities, but also allows for the municipalities to show that, yeah, they are tackling different elements and different things. So that's definitely an element that we saw as well. And finally, an important issue is the issue between and the distinction between correlation and causality. In many papers, we saw that they were interpreting the results in a more causal way, whereas, of course, those techniques typically dealt with the correlation. And so in a very recent publication, also published in ITOR, we try to show, yeah, what is the influence of policy evaluation and where do people use policy evaluation in the past? And as you can see, that's a graph from this paper with Anna Mergoni. Policy evaluation is a very recent issue within efficiency analysis, and tackling this endogeneity issue, that's something that most of the efficiency people and operations research people don't take very serious in a way that the policy evaluation is more interpreted in correlational way rather than causal way. And therefore in this paper, we try to document this trend, try to show that policy evaluations is increasingly popular. And then we show also, so where is it discussed, where isn't it discussed? Where is the issue of reverse causality discussed? Omitted variable bias, where is this discussed, etc. And that's again a little bit of follow-up. So because this paper was already, the winner paper was already published in 2018. So this recent paper tries to pick up on this specific research line in the analysis. So again, thank you very much, both in name of Isabel and myself, for this prize. And we would also like to thank Celso in particular for his excellent leadership in ITOR. I guess all of the strands that you just showed us Celso show that you were doing a great job as an editor, and I would definitely like to thank you as well for promoting our paper, for having us as a winner, but also for making it accessible to many people. So thank you very much for your leadership, and thank you very much for the honor that we received on this paper.
So next presentation, the winners in the next, the other category, methodology and applications. The winning paper is a critical analysis of the improved Clarke and Wright savings algorithm. The authors are Kenneth, Sorensen, Florian, Arnold, and Daniel Cuervo. And this article appeared in 2019. And the runner-up was the paper titled Stochastic Multi-Criteria Decision-Making Approach based on SMI electric with extended gray numbers. The authors are Zhu, Wang, and Zhang, and it also appeared in the same volume in 2019. I'd also like to make some comments about statistics concerning the paper that by Kenneth and his co-authors. It is the 55th most downloaded paper published in ITOR. Okay, it has 2,000, almost 2,400 downloads, and it seems to have few citations so far. Okay, but the panel considered that this was a very strong paper in terms of its contribution due to the analysis that was made, the computational experiments, and the kind of analysis that was performed in the paper. Okay, so it was not only based on bibliometric data, okay, but the conclusion of the panel was also based on the contribution that was considered very important in terms of the results. And since numerical results and is an important issue that we have to take very seriously. And I would like also to make a comment that Kenneth is the author. Could you come put yes, thank you, Chrissy. Kenneth is also the author of the third most downloaded paper in the history of ITOR. There was not a prize at that time. And this is the nice paper about the meta-heuristic, the metaphors exposed, which created a lot of discussion and is still used as the basis for our editorial policy on publications on meta-heuristics. Okay, so this is a very relevant article for the editorial policy of our journal. Okay, it has about 14,000 downloads and more than 300 citations. Okay, so we can now, the authors are then Kenneth Sorensen, who is a professor of the Faculty of Business and Economics of the University of Antwerp. Florian Arnold, who is a data science at Bayer, and Daniel Cuervo, who is a researcher and engineer at Syntef Digital in Norway. Okay, so thank you to the authors for their contribution to our journal, and we can now move to their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for the nice introductions also. But at the time that this paper was written, both Florian and Daniel were PhD students of mine, and well, since then they've spread out. Florian has gone back to Germany, and Daniel is now working in Norway. So, but we still keep in contact, and it's nice to be able to share this this very important honor with them. I also noticed there were a few similarities with between Kristof and myself. We are both from Flanders in Belgium. We're both working at a Faculty of Business and Economics. So I think we have a lot in common. There's also a big difference, which is that his paper was downloaded and cited a lot, whereas my paper, I mean, has gained very little traction, which to me was a bit surprising, because I think it has everything that a paper needs to gain a lot of cites, and yeah, it's short, it's provocative, and of course it's extremely well written. No, just kidding, but yeah, it didn't gain any traction at all, I must say. Just a few cites, contrary to my other paper on the metaphor, which cited 100 or hundreds of times. This paper only was cited a few times. Okay, maybe that changes. Hopefully that changes after this session. So here is the paper we're talking about, a critical analysis of the improved Clarke and Wright savings algorithm, which is of course a title of another paper that we analyzed in this paper, another paper. And the idea was basically to make a technical analysis of that paper, because we noticed some suspicious things in that paper. And well, we ended up writing this paper and turning it somewhat into a pamphlet for a few things that I think could be improved in the way we do research, especially in heuristic optimization. So that's what this paper was about. But I want to show this one more time. My other paper, which is cited hundreds of times, of course, had a much funnier message. The message was, please cut it out with your polar bear optimization, or a black hole optimization, or COVID-19 optimization. Yes, it exists, and it sucks like all other of these optimization methods, but it had a very funny message. The other paper perhaps had a slightly less funny message, and also maybe a conclusion that was a bit more difficult to swallow or to solve. Let's see. So metaphors clearly are not the only problem we have in our field of study, and this paper I think testifies to that. So it's the paper published in Science Asia, which is not a top journal, definitely not in our field. It's a multidisciplinary journal, but it's in every way a legitimate journal. It has impact factors. It's published by a respectable publisher, etc. So it's a decent journal that publishes this paper. And I think it was Florian who one day came to me and said, "Could you have a look at this paper? Because there is something suspicious about the results that appear in." So the paper is a modified Clarke and Wright algorithm, and obviously therefore based on the original Clarke and Wright algorithm. And I will explain it briefly so you understand fully what the paper proposes. It's not difficult, so if you follow me, you'll be able to completely understand the algorithm that the paper proposes. The Clarke and Wright algorithm is a very simple, but also very sensible, very logical and intuitive algorithm for the vehicle routing problem. Published in a very old issue of Operations Research. And the basic idea is that you start by creating one route for every customer in your vehicle routing problem, and then one by one connect routes, merge routes according to the largest possible savings. And that's why it's called the Clarke and Wright savings algorithms. And you repeat that as long as routes can be connected. So if we look at an example, it will be immediately clear. So you start from an initial solution which looks like this. You take a vehicle and you visit each customer separately. And then you look at how much you could save if you would not visit two customers separately, but would merge those routes into one route. Now, for example, if you would connect route 10 or the route that visits 10 to the routes that visits 6, you would have an additional cost of going from 10 to 6 or from 6 to 10, but you would save one trip from the depot to 10 and one trip from the depot to 6. So there would be some saved distance here. And it's basically just that. You calculate the largest savings and you merge those routes first. It's greedy. It's what we would call a greedy algorithm, but it's extremely simple and it's used everywhere as the basis of more complicated algorithms. Of course, you can see the closer to each other the customers are and the farther away from the depot they are, the larger the savings, which makes also perfect sense. You would gain a lot by, for example, merging the route with customer 8 and the route with customer 9. Obviously, the trip between 8 and 9 is short. The trip to the depot is long, so you save a lot. So basically, that's what you do. Connect routes while you can, and if you can't connect any routes anymore, you stop. That's the Clarke and Wright algorithm. Now it's the improved Clarke and Wright algorithm that appeared in that paper. It's basically a very simple randomized version of the original Clarke and Wright algorithm. The basic idea is to not greedily select the largest saving at each point, but to do what the authors call use a combination of tournament and roulette wheel selection. I think we can call, but Celso is here, so I'm a bit nervous to say it, but I think we could call that grasp, right? It's not fully greedy. It's partially randomized. So I think we can safely call it some form of grasp, greedy randomized adaptive search procedure. So instead of always taking the best saving from the savings lists, we now pick a random number between 3 and 7. And well, we don't know where those numbers come from. It's just they're like this in the paper. And then we use roulette wheel selection to select one of the T best savings. So, simple example. Let's say these are the customers to merge, first 6 and 10, then 9 and 10, 8 and 9, etc. Here you see the savings. So the list is sorted in decreasing order of savings. And normally we would always pick the best one first, right? But now with the improved, between quotes, Clarke and Wright, we first draw a random number between, what was it, 3 and 7. So for example, 5. And then we take the 5 best savings. And between those, we use roulette wheel selection to select them. So basically, we pick one of them with a probability proportional to the saving itself. For example, here you see the total saving, then first one has a probability of 0.22 to be selected, the second one a probability of 0.213, etc. Okay, now we draw a random number. between 0 and 1, it's 0.7, so that's between 0.6 and 0.8. So we pick the saving 5, 6, the fourth one here, to be executed. And that is basically repeated. And that's it, right? So it's the Clarke and savings algorithm with a simple randomization of the selection of the saving to make or the customers to merge. That's the only change. So now all of this, I think, is completely sensible. It makes perfect sense. It's what I would tell my students if they came to me and said, I have this greedy algorithm, but it doesn't work really well. I would tell them, okay, maybe you can try something simple and randomize a little bit. So it's a little bit less greedy and then see what happens. So that's what they did. The advantages of an algorithm like that is that it doesn't always generate the same solution. It generates a different solution because you've randomized. Every iteration, you generate a different solution. What the authors of the improved Clarke and Wright algorithm said is, okay, let's take 10,000 iterations. And at the end of those 10,000 iterations, we take the best solution. So that's obviously going to be at least a little bit better than just a simple Clarke and Wright, just because you've randomized and taken the best solution at the end of those 10,000 iterations. On the other hand, it's still very fast. Clarke and Wright algorithm can solve 100,000 customer vehicle routing problem with no problem. The improved Clarke and Wright is 10,000 times slower, but that is still very fast. Also, it's very easy, almost trivial to implement. Just take an existing Clarke and Wright, add some randomization, and you're there. And that's when it became suspicious, because we looked at the results that this algorithm produced, which you see here for the Oggerat instances, well-known instance set. And all of the numbers I've indicated in bold here in the ICW, the improved Clarke and Wright column, all of the ones I've indicated in bold are the same as the best known solutions for this problem. Now, these best known solutions are usually derived using much more complicated algorithms with much more complicated local search schemes and difficult intensification and diversification schemes than this simple algorithm. So we looked at those results, and given our experience in developing vehicle routing algorithms, we said, this is a bit too good to be true, right? It's extremely unlikely, it seemed to us, that this simple variation of an existing algorithm would generate these results. So aren't these results a bit too good, we asked ourselves. There's only one way to check, I guess, which is to re-implement the algorithm and check for yourself whether you can replicate the results of the authors, which is what we did. Fortunately for us, unfortunately for the authors, turned out to be very easy to re-implement this algorithm. Now, I have to put that between quote marks, because of course, if you're going to attack some authors saying you made mistakes, you have to be very careful not to make mistakes yourself, of course. So what we did was we implemented the algorithm twice independently. So both Florian and Daniel implemented the algorithm by themselves, independently of each other. And then they spoke to each other about what they have done, showed them each other their results, until what they got was statistically the same. So until we could not differentiate the results in a statistic way, because of course these results are stochastic, contain a lot of randomness. And in fact, that turned out to be extremely difficult and time-consuming, because, and it turns out that any little thing in your code, which is not exactly the same, gives you different results. I write smaller than, where you write smaller than or equal. And even though we're dealing with real numbers and that should not make a difference at all, it gives you completely different results. You use a different random number generator with a different seed, we get different results, etc. So it took a few months actually to get that right, but in the end we were confident, like, okay, we have code which is the same as the code that is described in this paper, and it works without errors. So now we see the results of the improved Clarke and Wright, P and K here in this column. And then you see what we get. Now, okay, the results are stochastic, both in their situation and ours. So we said, let's give them the benefit of the doubt and run our algorithm for 100 times, and then take both the average, but most importantly, the best, right? So in this column, you see what we get if we run their algorithm 100 times and then take the best. So even if we give them 100 times the time that they told us they took, then what do we get? And if you see, everything that is in red now is where our results, so that means their algorithm 100 runs, where our results are worse than what they report. Okay? So in all of these red numbers, we could not replicate their results, even though we gave them 100 chances to do so. Okay? All of the other results, something different is going on. And well, there's lots of tables in the paper like this, basically all show the same picture. The results that are reported in this paper, the improved Clarke and Wright algorithm, these results could not have been generated in any way by the algorithm described in that paper. So what's going on? Oh, sorry. So what's going on? Oops. Could have been a programming error, right? Maybe they did something wrong accidentally, and then by accident, the results that they got were a lot better than the results of the algorithm that they described. But well, I'm sure you'll agree that it seems to be forbidden by the second law of thermodynamics. Like if you do something wrong, the chance that you get by accident a lot better results is very small. Or maybe they did something clever in their code, but then failed to describe it. Maybe there is something they did, but then didn't mention in the paper. Second option. Well, again, I think you'll agree, chances of that are very slim. Or maybe they just misreported their results. Maybe they just accidentally copy-pasted the wrong tables into their paper. But again, not very likely, if you ask. I think the only conclusion here is that this most likely was a deliberate misrepresentation of the results that the algorithm gave. The results were spiced up, improved a little bit manually or using another algorithm. At least they were clever enough not to improve upon the optimal solution, which is something you also see sometimes, but that they were clever enough not to do that. So then we started to think a little bit broader. So apparently these authors were, and I'm putting cheating here between quotes because well, I don't want to, well, I have my thoughts, but I don't want to publicly accuse them of doing unethical things, but at least they misrepresented their results, or the results in their paper could not have been produced by the algorithm. Now, why? Well, I think it's obvious because in our field, if you produce good results, it means you get your paper published. And if your results are not good, it means, well, no publication. How many times have you gotten the question from a reviewer saying, oh, you should beat the best known result, or your results should be competitive with this guy's or that guy? Even if you have something interesting to say, it just doesn't fly in our field unless you can beat the competition. Also, if you do it well, which the authors of the previous paper didn't do well, it's almost impossible to catch, right? If they were well, not clever enough to disguise what they did in a complicated algorithm. Because, I mean, we were able to replicate the improved Clarke and Wright algorithm because it's very simple. But if that would have been a hybrid genetic algorithm with ant colony optimization and neural network, I mean, no way would it have been possible for us to re-implement that algorithm, let alone re-implement it twice. So if you do it well, there's nobody who's going to re-implement your algorithm. So it's almost impossible to be caught unless you're stupid enough, for example, to improve upon the optimal solution or something like that. So the risk is low. You cannot be caught if you do it well, and the gains are high because you get publication. That's something we said in the paper. Yeah, it's not good. There's a lot of motivation, or I say the conditions in our fields are such that this type of research is actually motivated rather than punished. The focus on competition, which I talked about, instead of a focus on understanding things. We think good researchers are the ones that consistently are able to produce algorithms that outcompete the others. Yeah, even though in many cases there's not much learned from those algorithms, except that algorithm X is good for problem Y. Okay, that's one observation. The focus on competition, I think, is harmful to the field, and especially to the generation of real knowledge and understanding in the field. Also, we like competition, but it's very poorly organized. Basically, everybody represents their results as they want. And then you focus on number of best known solutions you get, and I focus on the average quality. You replicate 20 times, I replicate 50 times. You stop the search after 10 minutes, I stop it after 2 hours. I mean, there's no clear guidelines on how you should really compare algorithms. So even though we love competition, the organization of that competition is really lacking in structure. And then the third condition that allows this type of research to be published, I think, and that was the main concluding message from the paper, was that we do not share our source code, which is very, very strange since it's so crucial, so vital to our field. So that was happening here. So then the main conclusion of that paper was we should really start publishing and sharing our source code. I know, of course, the source code we produce is research code, which is not meant for other eyes. Might contain a lot of swear words and dirty language. But at the very least, I think reviewers should be able to access your source code. And but of course, that means more work for reviewers if they want to rerun your experiments. So, but I think on the part of the researcher, it's a small effort to add some experiment files, make files, just say, okay, run this command, and my code, this code here will generate the results that you see in the paper. It's not that much work, and it will make the review process a lot more airtight and allow a lot less of these papers here to be to pass the net. But of course, we should also publish our source code and open it up to the world, because everybody is always reinventing the wheel in our field. Everybody is coding their own Clarke and Wright algorithms, their own taboo searches and genetic algorithms, etc. So we really benefit the scientific field of heuristics if we would all open up our source code and work on one big project. That would mean a lot of less work for us all, and a lot faster research, I think. Okay, so that's basically it. I'm not the first one to call for opening up source code in research. Here's another on a completely different, in a completely different field. I think this was on geological prediction of earthquakes, for example. There too, they say if you don't release source code, it's very, very hard to reproduce results. Even things which you think are just one algorithm, like Fourier transform or something like that, it turns out if you don't have the exact source code, it's really difficult to reproduce the results. So I still stand by that point. I think we would all benefit if source code would be shared between researchers, but it should definitely be shared between researchers and reviewers to make sure they can catch papers like the one that was criticized in our paper. Well, that was it. And if you need me, I'm here. And of course, I would also like to thank Celso for his great work as editor of ITOR. Thank you very much for that. And thank you to IFORS-ITOR and Wiley for this award. We are really honored and very pleased with it.